Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The porcelain cup shattered against the wall inches from my face, a spray of hot tea and ceramic shards slicing the tense silence of the penthouse. I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to. Across the low mahogany table, the woman sitting in the high-backed silk chair didn't look like a mother. She looked like an executioner waiting for the guillotine to drop. Outside, the Seoul skyline was a blur of neon and rain, but inside this room, the air was so heavy with threat it felt like breathing underwater. You possess a catastrophic misunderstanding of your position, Mr. Vance, Madame Ryu said, her voice smooth, cultured, and utterly venomous. She placed a check on the table. It had enough zeros to buy my childhood home 3 times over. My son played a game. He wore a costume of mediocrity to learn humility. You were a prop in that stage play. But the curtain has fallen, and the actors are going home. It is time for you to exit the stage. My eyes flicked to the check, then back to her cold, obsidian eyes. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but I forced my posture to remain rigid. They thought I was just a mid-level marketing manager, a nobody who had snagged the golden goose. They didn't know that I knew exactly who Ryu Min-jae was before he even took off his glasses. And they certainly didn't understand that love, real, twisted, agonizing love, couldn't be bought out like a hostile corporate takeover. I'm not an employee you can fire, Madame Ryu, I said, my voice steady despite the metallic taste of fear in my mouth. And Min-jae isn't a distinct asset you can liquidate. He's a person, and he loves me. She laughed then. It was a dry, brittle sound. Love? In our world, love is a liability. Power is the only currency. And tonight, you will learn just how bankrupt you truly are. To understand how I ended up facing down the matriarch of the Ryunghwa conglomerate, you have to understand the lie. It started 6 months ago, in the cramped, coffee-stained break room of Sterling and Finch Advertising. He was known as Adrian then. Just Adrian. The quiet guy in data analytics who wore oversized knits that swallowed his frame and thick-rimmed glasses that slid down his nose. He was invisible to 90% of the office. He was the guy you asked to fix a spreadsheet, the guy who nodded politely when the creative directors screamed about fonts, the guy who ate lunch alone on the fire escape. But I saw him. I'm Julian, a senior strategist. My job is to see patterns where others see chaos. And Adrian was a pattern that didn't fit. I noticed the way he held his cheap convenience store coffee, pinky slightly extended, grip precise, like he was used to holding fine bone china. I noticed his shoes. They looked like standard Oxfords, but the leather aged too well, the stitching too perfect. Bespoke disguised as budget. I started joining him on the fire escape. At first, it was just silence. I'd smoke, he'd read. Then, it became small talk. You analyze data, I said one windy Tuesday, looking out over the gray city. You tell me what the numbers say, but you never tell me what you think. Adrian looked up, startled. His eyes, usually hidden behind the glare of his lenses, were a shocking, clear hazel. The numbers don't lie, Julian. Opinions do. Opinions are what sell the product. I countered, leaning closer. Tell me, that campaign for the energy drink. The data says it's a hit. What do you say? He hesitated, then a small, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. It's soulless. It sells desperation packaged as vitality. It'll spike in Q2 and crash by Q3 because it lacks an emotional core. I stared at him. He had dissected my 3-week strategy in 10 seconds. You're too smart for that basement office, Adrian. And you, he said, his voice dropping an octave, losing its shy stammer, are too observant for your own good. That was the spark. The slow burn began there, amidst the exhaust fumes and the distant hum of traffic. We became a secret routine. Late nights at the office became our sanctuary. We ordered takeout, cheap noodles that he ate with a refined grace that baffled me, and debated philosophy, art, and strategy. He never talked about his family. He said they were traditional and lived far away. He said he wanted to build something for himself, to know what it felt like to earn a paycheck that wasn't guaranteed by a birthright. I didn't press him. I assumed he was a runaway from some strict countryside household. I fell in love with his mind first. It was a labyrinth of brilliance, trapped behind a wall of enforced modesty. Then, I fell for his gentleness. The way he would cover me with his coat when I fell asleep at my desk. The way his hand would brush mine over a stack of reports, lingering just a second too long, the air between us charging with static electricity. It happened on a rainy Thursday. The elevator broke down. Cliché, I know, but life is full of them. We were trapped between the 14th and 15th floors. The emergency lights bathed the metal box in a hazy red glow. I hate small spaces, he whispered, his breathing hitching. He was trembling. Hey, I said, moving to him, grabbing his shoulders. Look at me. You're fine. I'm here. He looked at me, eyes wide, panic warring with something else. Desire? Julian, he breathed. I shouldn't. I can't. Can't what? I can't want this. My life. It's not mine to give. Then steal it back, I whispered. I kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, a collision of months of suppressed longing. He froze for a second, rigid against the metal wall, and then he broke. He grabbed my lapels, pulling me closer, kissing me back with a hunger that terrified and thrilled me. It was the kiss of a starving man finally tasting bread. When the doors opened an hour later, we were disheveled, breathless, and irrevocably changed. We went back to my apartment. That night, Adrian wasn't the shy data analyst. He was commanding, passionate, possessing a natural dominance that surfaced the moment we crossed the threshold of my bedroom. He touched me like I was something precious, something he was terrified of breaking but unable to stop consuming. For 2 months, we lived in a bubble. He stayed at my place most nights. We were happy. It was domestic bliss, coffee in the morning, tangled limbs at night. I thought we had time. I thought we were just two guys figuring it out. I was wrong. The bubble burst on a Tuesday morning. I walked into the office to find the lobby swarming with men in black suits. Earpieces. Stone faces. The kind of security detail reserved for heads of state. I pushed through the crowd, a bad feeling pooling in my gut. In the center of the lobby stood a man. An older man, radiating power, leaning on a cane with a silver dragon's head handle. And next to him, head bowed, wearing a suit that cost more than my annual salary, was Adrian. But he wasn't wearing his glasses. His hair was slicked back. His posture was regal, cold, distant. Adrian, I called out, my voice cracking. The older man looked at me with disdain. Adrian, there is no Adrian here. This is Ryu Min-jae, heir to the Ryunghwa group. Min-jae didn't look up. He didn't look at me. He just stood there, a statue of ice, as the older man gripped his arm. Come, Min-jae. The experiment is over. Your engagement has been announced. Engagement? The word hit me like a physical blow. Min-jae, I shouted, stepping forward. A security guard shoved me back, hard. I stumbled, hitting the reception desk. Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were dead, void of the warmth, the humor, the love I had seen just that morning over toast and jam. Goodbye, Julian, he said. His voice was flat. Thank you for the hospitality. Hospitality. As if I were a hotel. As if I were nothing. They swept him away in a fleet of black sedans, leaving me standing in the lobby of the ad agency, shattered, while my coworkers whispered and pointed. That should have been the end. A rational person would have taken the heartbreak, drunk a bottle of whiskey, and moved on. But I wasn't rational. I was furious. And I was heartbroken. I spent the next week digging. I used every favor, every connection, every skill I had as a strategist. I found out who Ryunghwa was. They weren't just a company. They were an empire. Construction, shipping, electronics. And they were ruthless. I found out about the engagement. An arranged marriage to the daughter of a rival shipping magnate. A merger of billions. The engagement party was set for this Saturday at the Grand Hyatt. I tried to call him. His number was disconnected. I tried to go to the headquarters. I was thrown out. Then, the invitation came. Not to the party, but to the penthouse. A summons from the queen herself. Madame Ryu. Which brings us back to the shattered teacup. I'm not taking the money, I repeated, pushing the check back toward her. Madame Ryu stood up. She was small, but she cast a long shadow. She walked to the window, looking out at the city her family practically owned. Do you know why Min-jae was working there, Mr. Vance? She asked, her back to me. It is a tradition. The heir must understand the lives of the ants before he rules the colony. It ensures he does not feel pity when he has to crush them. She turned, her face a mask of cruelty. He told us about you. He confessed. He begged us to let him go. He offered to renounce his title. My heart leaped. He had fought for me. And do you know what we told him? She smiled, a terrifying, thin curving of lips. We told him that if he did not walk away, if he did not marry Mississippi Park this Saturday, we would destroy you. We would plant evidence on your computer. Embezzlement. Corporate espionage. You would rot in a prison cell for 20 years. The blood drained from my face. He made a choice, Mr. Vance. He chose your life over his happiness. That is the burden of nobility. He is protecting you. By coming here, by refusing to let go, you are merely tightening the noose around your own neck. She walked closer, looming over me. Leave Seoul. Tonight. If you are seen in this city after midnight, I will not be as polite as offering a check. I will simply remove the obstacle. 2 guards stepped forward from the shadows. The threat was clear. I walked out of that penthouse shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like it was burning my veins. They were using his love for me as a weapon against him. They had blackmailed him into submission. He wasn't a cold traitor. He was a hostage. And I wasn't going to let them win. I had 48 hours until the engagement party. I went to my apartment and packed a bag. Not to leave, but to prepare. I needed leverage. Madame Ryu thought she held all the cards, but she made one mistake. She underestimated the ant. I remembered something Adrian, Min Jae, had told me during one of our late-night talks. He had been working on a project for the agency, analyzing the data of a subsidiary company. He had found discrepancies. Ghost numbers, he had called them. Money moving to offshore accounts that didn't exist on the official books. At the time, we thought it was just the client cooking the books. But now, that client was a Ryunghwa subsidiary. Min Jae had the data. It was on his personal laptop, the one he left at my apartment. I tore my apartment apart until I found it. It was hidden under the bed, in an old shoebox. I booted it up. Password protected. I typed in his birthday. Incorrect. I typed in 123456. Incorrect. I paused, thinking. What mattered to him? I typed in fire escape. Access granted. My chest tightened. He had changed the password to the place we met. I scanned the files. It was there. A comprehensive dossier of illegal dumping, tax evasion, and bribery involving the very shipping company the Ryunghwa Group was merging with. If this got out, the merger would collapse. The stock would tank. The police would be involved. It was a nuclear bomb. And I had the trigger. Saturday night. The Grand Hyatt Ballroom. It was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. I didn't have an invitation, but I didn't need one. I had emailed a single file to Madame Ryu's personal secretary 10 minutes ago with the subject line, checkmate. I walked past the security. They had been instructed to let me in. I could feel the eyes on me. I was wearing my best suit, a charcoal gray slim fit that Min Jae had picked out for me once. I didn't look like a billionaire, but I walked like I owned the place. The ballroom was silent. All eyes were on the stage. Min Jae was there. He looked devastatingly handsome in a white tuxedo, but he looked like a corpse. His skin was pale, his eyes hollow. Beside him stood a woman who looked equally miserable. Behind them, the parents. Madame Ryu was there, scanning the crowd, her face a mask of carefully controlled panic. She saw me. Her eyes widened. She tapped her husband's arm and whispered something. The patriarch stiffened. I walked straight down the center aisle. The murmurs started. Asterisk, who is that? Is that a crasher? Asterisk. I didn't stop until I was at the foot of the stage. Min Jae looked up. When he saw me, the mask cracked. His mouth fell open. Julian, he mouthed. Go. Please go. I shook my head. I held up a flash drive in my hand. It was a prop. I had already set the data to auto-release to every major news outlet in Korea in 5 minutes if I didn't input a kill code, but they didn't know that. I'm not leaving, Min Jae, I said, my voice projecting clearly in the silent hall. Madame Ryu stepped to the microphone. Security. Remove this man. If anyone touches me, I said loudly, turning to face the crowd and the parents. The Ryunghwa Group's financial records regarding the Incheon port merger go public. Every bribe. Every laundered one. It's all scheduled to upload. Gasps rippled through the room. The flashes of cameras went off like strobe lights. This was the scandal of the decade. Madame Ryu froze. She looked at the flash drive, then at me. She realized the trap. If she arrested me, the info leaked. If she killed me, the info leaked. What do you want? The patriarch growled, his voice booming without the mic. I want him to have a choice, I said, pointing at Min-jae. No blackmail. No threats against me. Let him choose. Min-jae stared at me. Tears welled in his eyes. He looked at his parents, at the empire they had built on fear and control. Then he looked at me, the aunt who had just held a dragon hostage for him. Min-jae, his father warned. Step down and you lose everything. The money, the status, the legacy. You will be nothing. Min-jae took a deep breath. He untied his white bow tie and let it hang loose. He took off the expensive watch on his wrist and placed it on the podium. I was nothing until I met him, Min-jae said into the microphone. His voice was strong, resonating through the hall. I lived a life of numbers and expectations. I was a ghost in my own home. He walked to the edge of the stage. He looked down at me, and the love in his eyes was so intense it almost knocked me to my knees. You threatened to destroy him to control me, Min-jae said to his mother. But you forgot one thing. You can't threaten a man who has nothing left to lose. He jumped down from the stage. The crowd screamed. It was a breach of protocol so severe it shattered the atmosphere. Min-jae landed in front of me. He didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the billions dissolving in the background. He grabbed my face with both hands. You idiot, he choked out, laughing through tears. You reckless, brilliant idiot. You could have been killed. I told you. I whispered, resting my forehead against his. Steal your life back. I'm disowned, he said, the reality setting in. I have nothing. No money. No job. Just the clothes on my back. You have me, I said. And you have a hell of a resume for a data analyst. He kissed me. It wasn't like the kiss in the elevator. This was a declaration of war. It was a public seal on a contract written in rebellion. Under the blinding lights of the paparazzi, amidst the shouts of his furious parents and the chaos of the ruined gala, Ryu Min-jae, the Dragonair, kissed Julian Vance, the commoner, and burned his kingdom to the ground. 6 months later. The studio apartment is small. Much smaller than my old place, because legal fees are expensive. The Ryunghwa Group is currently embroiled in 3 different government investigations. The merger failed. The stock plummeted. Min-jae, he goes by Adrian again, is in the kitchen making coffee. He's wearing a t-shirt with a hole in the shoulder and sweatpants. He works as a consultant for a tech startup now. He makes a fraction of what he used to, but he smiles. He smiles with his whole face. He walks over and hands me a mug. Regrets? I ask him. It's a question I ask sometimes, when the nights are quiet and the weight of what he gave up settles in. He looks around our tiny living room. At the second-hand sofa. At the stack of books on the floor. Then he looks at me. He climbs onto my lap, straddling me, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. I traded a prison of gold for a life of freedom, he whispers, leaning in to bite softly at my lower lip. I have the only thing I ever wanted. He kisses me, slow and deep, tasting of coffee and contentment. Besides, he murmurs against my skin, a wicked glint in his eyes. Watching my mother's face when you threatened to leak the files? That was worth $1 billion alone. I laugh, pulling him closer, tangling my fingers in his hair. The world outside is still chaotic, and we have enemies who will never forgive us. But in here, in this small, warm space, we are kings of our own making. And that is how the paper tiger devoured the dragon's heir. If you live for that moment of public defiance, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you give up $1 billion inheritance for love, or is money the only truth? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,